NGE, Nobody Dies Chapter 4, Every Time a Bell Rings, an Evangelion fanfic. Oh dear Lord, she's infecting him. Palming her face, Uekari sighs as they watch cleanup crews hoisting scaffolding around the corpse of the fifth angel, in the aftermath of what has become known as the Crab Battle of Tokyo 3. Res screaming out that he had to hit its weak point for massive damage was bad enough. Shinji then saying they had to nuke it from orbit just to be sure was the icing on the cake. Well, at least she finished the report to the committee. Time has come to figure out the logistics of shipping over Kyogo Zeppelin Sahusego. And if they have room left on the Pacific Fleet, they might be able to fit her Evangelion, too. Glancing to the right, at her console on Terminal Dogma, Ue clears her throat. Maya? Let's brief the commander. Maya Ibuki, first lieutenant and assistant to both Ue and Dr. Akagi, nods. Yes, senpai. Walking to the right and back, the young woman in the crisp nerve uniform hugs the briefcase full of logistics files and test results close to her chest, ready to protect them with her life. Of course, this is her lot in life. Following in the footsteps of the two women she respects and idolizes. I hope you don't mind, Maya, Ue says with a smirk, but soon, instead of riding herd on two overworked scientists, you'll be riding herd on three. I heard Dr. Sahu is arriving, Maya says. What is she like? Driven. Single-minded. Ue sighs. If it were legal, she'd marry Unito too. I dare say she doesn't have my sense of humor or Itsuko's sense of decorum, but she is more devoted to Project E than just about anyone I've ever met. Maya nods, smiling. And she's also the mother of a Neva pilot. In a sense, Ue sighs, she treats the pilot like her son. Hesod. You'll see more of both the children when they arrive. Oh? She has another kid? Ue sighs. Pushing her glasses up her nose as they enter the lift, the grinds her teeth and nods. From the way she talks about her daughter, yes. You would think the pilot's an only child. Chapter 4, Every Time a Bell Rings. Upon their entering the classroom of 4A, the students erupt with a mighty shout. As one, the arranged student population lets out the cry of Crab Battle, and then begins loudly humming the fight music from the original Star Trek series. Shinji Ikari, pilot of Unit 01, palms his face and groans. Next to him, not noticing or simply not caring, Rei Yanami, Unit 00 pilot and person of rare ability to use a rocket launcher one-handed, skips to her desk. The cheers die down thanks to the venomous gaze from Hikari Hiraki. Considering the events of the past couple of weeks, the entire student population of Tokyo 3 Municipal High School knows far better than to talk her off. Smiling slightly but warmly to her, he waves. Thanks, Shinji says, scratching the back of his head, sorry about that. A slight blush creeps on her face, and she chuckles. You saved the world, she says, I'll let it slide. This time. He nods, and walks to his desk as class begins. There is a tree outside the lunch area, and since it is sunny today, Shinji decided to get some fresh air. Misato overruled his concerns about going to school the day after killing an angel, and here he is. The problem is, his job is basically killing messengers of God. Such a thing, especially when such an act saves humanity, should merit him a day off to relax. But Yo. Looking up, he turns from his lunch to the larger boy. One he remembers, who kept the class rep from kicking his ribs in the first day he arrived. Tuji? He asks. Yep, Tuji Suzuhara says, folding his arms. So, you hit in on the class rep? He asks. He looks from side to side. He makes sure he isn't being watched. No, he says, I'm just being nice to her. Tuji nods, smirks, and sits down next to him. Good to hear, he says, patting Shinji on the shoulder. So, you and Re killed another of those things, didn't ya? Yes, Shinji sighs, and I'm not hitting on Ray, either. Altdorf, does she have any friends around here? Tuji shrugs, reaching into his sweatshirt and taking out an apple. Munching on it, he mutters something about nut job and double-jointed and how those traits should make her more popular. Ken's been acting weird around her, though. Ken? Glasses kid, military nut, Tuji says, when he realized you and an army pilot giant robots you had to hose him down. I swear, there ain't a single normal person in this city. Shinji sighs, leaning back on the tree. Reflecting on himself, reflecting on the events of the past couple of weeks. The angels have managed to actually be less prominent on his mind than they should be. Why is it, he considers, that massive creatures attempting to kill and eat him are not a major concern? Tuji screams. Hanging upside down from the tree branch, hair hanging from her head and a smile on her face, readjusts the hold her toes have on the branch and turns to Shinji. What you doing? The elevator doors open, and Shinji looks up as he locks eyes with the sole occupant. Eyes much like his stare back from behind amber glasses, and with a sigh, Shinji steps into the elevator and takes a position next to his father. Father, he says. Shinji, Gendo Ikari responds. The doors shut and begin speeding downwards into the base. Sync test? The commander asks. Yeah, he sighs, is this necessary? I just killed an angel yesterday and had a full day of school. A small chuckle. Your mother can answer that question far better than I can, Gendo responds. By and large, I nod and grunt. He nods, sighing. Shinji scratches the back of his head, deciding whether or not to put a little distance between himself and his father. Of course, distance is their specialty. Where Ikari was devoted, doting, and kind, Gendo Ikari had a tendency of looking like he had something better to do. What you have to understand is that our work is important, Gendo explains, and our raising Ra is not to replace you. Ra is different. I've noticed as much. Not just in personality, the commander says, there were several ways Ra could have been brought up. Your mother decided on us raising her personally. Shinji inclines his head, glancing at his father. I get the feeling our orders translate to whatever Mom tells us to do. Silence, for a moment. Finally, a small smirk comes to Gendo Ikari's face. After 20 years, I am used to it. We're what? Misato sighs, leaning on her hand as Shinji stares at her. Silently, she takes out the memo again, holding it in front of him. At 06:00 hours this coming Wednesday, aka day after tomorrow, you, me, and Dr. Ikari will be leaving to rendezvous with the United Nations Joint Pacific Fleet to meet with Dr. Kyogo Zeppelin Sahu and the pilot of Unit 02, the second child, in order to meet and greet as they are escorted to Tokyo 3. He takes the memo, looking it over. Slumping his shoulders with a sigh, he nods. Okay, he says, it says something about guests. Bring some friends, Misato says, Dr. Ikari's orders, this time. It's not that bad, Shinji. You get to spend some time with your mum. I haven't spent time with my mum for 5 years, Shinji sighs, rolling his eyes as he drops the memo on the kitchen table between them, outside of the occasional lunch where she asks me how my grades are or if I have a girlfriend. Because, of course, this isn't misplaced jealousy about them raising Ra and not you. He groans, palming his face. Fine, he sighs, you're coming, too? As Tactical Ops Commander, my job is to assess the resources NERV will have at their disposal, she says, sipping her beer. In all honesty, I want to see if Dr. Sahu's as big a bitch as the legends say. Why does everyone call her that? Misato smirks. Give it 2 days. You'll see. It senses it. Deep within the ruins of old Tokyo, buried under the tons of water and debris, deep within the earth, it senses it coming. A small smile parts its great and massive lips, sensing the presence of that which shall be coveted by all. Deep within the darkness, 18 eyes glow red. And with a shrug of its massive bulk, and the pulse of the light of its soul, it leaves its nest and heads out to sea. Man, Ken's kicking himself for missing this. Pressing his hands against the glass wall taking up the side of the transport, 2G grins as he looks out upon the 12-ship-strong Pacific Fleet. Not the military nut his friend is, he still knows something impressive when he sees it. Even from scale, he can tell the massive, gun-laden destroyers are larger than their school. And then, there's the ship at the center. Longer than any 3 ships laid end to end, wider than any 2 side to side. Its deck is covered in white fighter planes and black helicopters, officers scrambling up and down the deck like army ants. That's the Over the Rainbow, Hikari says, leaning up against 2G. Ken told me the story. The day of second impact, the carrier was under construction in a dry dock at San Francisco. The tsunami destroyed the dock and everyone thought it was lost. A few days later, it came back to port, wet, a little flooded, but everyone alive. When they asked where they were, someone said, "Over the Rainbow." And they gave the ship that name. It's a supercarrier, Misato says, both squeaking as she sneaks up behind them, heavily armed, like a task force in itself. Only reason it even needs those other ships is because they're around to support Unit O2. The VTOL jerks, dropping towards the deck of the massive carrier. Resting wheels on the deck as the cigar-shaped craft is tied down, the glass turns opaque before segmenting and folding down into a set of stairs. "Smiles, everyone," Yui says, adjusting her jacket. Adjusting the collar of her dress uniform and beret, Misato smirks and follows. "Nervous?" Yui asks. "Angels, I'm nervous about," Misato responds, "scientists, less so." Shinji trails behind 2G and Hikari as the two chat. As said, Ken was unable to go. Something about being bedridden from the excitement he was experiencing, but hell if they know what he meant. Scratching the back of his head, he draws in on himself. Wearing his school uniform and a heavy jacket, gloves and scarves, the chill of the sea air batters him against the chill of the awkward situation. Never social, he found out he was much like his father in that respect. Still, his father found Mum. So this is the famous Dr. Ikari and the third child. He stops, looking up. There is an entrance, then there is this. He cannot speak for his own mom's insistence on how seriously he takes piloting Eva, but there are limits and they involve him having to wear the plug suit all the time. Standing a little taller than him, in a black plug suit, blood red at the shoulders, chest, and boots, yellow highlights along the arms and legs, he smirks. His skin is pale, his hair the color of ash and gold, and his eyes airy-odd. Blue, with hints of red behind it, like one shouldn't mix with the other. "I'm Errol Dolobsaru," the boy declares, pilot of Evangelion Mark O2 and second child. Shinji raises an eyebrow, stopping. He realizes that, unintentionally, he has caught up with the others, and sighs, thrusting his hands in his pockets. "Wow," 2G says, "I hope those things have pockets for smuggling bananas, 'cause if they don't, you're really happy to see us." Hikari elbows him in the side. "2G." She growls through clenched teeth. Grinning, Hewitt pushes her glasses up her nose. "I must say, I've looked forward to meeting you," she says, "and, if the rumors are true, I guess that not far behind must be." "Correct, Ikari." Tightening her coat around her, cracking her knuckles with loud pops and narrowing blue eyes, she takes position next to the pilot and places her hand on his shoulder. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Ikari," Kyoko Zeppelin-Saha says. "Now, if the pleasantries are out of the way, you will want to inspect Unit O2, yes?" "If this is pleasant, yes," Yui says with a tight smile. "Shinji?" She turns, finding only empty space where he was standing. She sighs, turning to Misato. "Damn it," Misato growls. No, Yui says, waving her off, "my son is not that interested in technical issues. Come along, Misato. I'll begin our inspection. You take care of the kids. She walks off, whistling, following the pilot and doctor. Leaning back on her heels, she turns to Tuji and Hikari. You know, she says, I do have the authority to order a missile launch. Grinning, Tuji raises his thumb. Sweet. Something about the pilot made him profoundly uncomfortable. Then again, he tries to avoid young men in spandex, so it was probably just that, Shinji muses as he walks along the underdeck, his nerve ID prominently displayed on his jacket to answer the pressing question of what he's doing down there. Damn it. Perking an ear, he walks down the corridor, looking at a sign above his head and finding it reading about residential quarters. Hands in his pockets, he walks down the hallway. The doors are closed, locked, save for one. The door is open almost haphazardly, as if opened in a rush. He heard a voice coming from it. A girl's voice, in particular. Just not good enough to come along, am I? Walking up to the door, he leans over, looking through the crack of the opening. He can see the occupant, although not all of her. Just enough to make his eyes go wide and heart flutter. He can mainly see the legs. Long, well-toned, seeing a good amount of them through the hem and cut of the long skirt she is wearing, the skirt topping off in a pair of suspenders over a white blouse. The outfit is conservative, modest, but more than enough to give him an idea of what is underneath, and his hand freezes in mid-knock. And then the ship pitches and he whacks his head on the door. Yuri, the voice says, if you came back just to rub my face in this, I swear. The door swings open. Rubbing his forehead, Shinji groans, looking up and freezes. Now he sees the rest. The slim, angular, classical face. The sharp blue eyes and long red hair. Eyes meet and the two freeze for a moment, words lost on their lips. His, a groan, and her, a sharp retort. Sorry, he says, I just heard a voice and... Her eyes dart from the face to the name tag. Her memories match up with the name and her eyes go wide as saucers. Mein Gott, she exclaims, hands covering her mouth, you're the third child. I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. She averts his gaze, finding something fascinating on the door as he looks from side to side and finally chuckles, scratching his head. Okay, I guess I'm flattered that I have fans. Her cheeks flush and she backs into the room, clenching and unclenching the hem of her skirt as she clears her throat, more than once, wandering over to the desk and the book abandoned on it. Still standing in the doorway, he leans to the side, slowly letting himself get a good glance at the room's occupant as she shifts from side to side, attempting to look busy. I guess I'm more flattered that they're attractive. The book drops to the floor. Oh boy. I just said that out loud, didn't I? The door to the side of the mausoleum opens, and peeking his head out, a man pushing 70 in a crisp nerve uniform enters. Rolling his neck with a grunt, he walks towards the desk and stands to its side, as the occupant of the chair files through floating holographic requisition papers. How was Geneva? Ikari asks. Stifling, Kozufu Atsuki responds, Yua has gone to rendezvous with a second and Sahu. And insisting Sahu bring her daughter along, Gendo responds, hands tented in front of his face. The fifth angel appeared in a form different than the scrolls. Considering the incident with the third angel, we can assume the scenario isn't going as the old men planned it, the sub-commander of Nerve says, leaning on his former student's chair. Your thoughts? Dance as fast as we can, Ikari says with a small grin, and should all else fail, try for one of the less painful spots in hell when we all die. It was not that Shinji's aunt and uncle didn't care about him, it's just that they didn't really concern themselves with the nitty-gritty of parenting. So, he had a habit of making quick exits when things got awkward. That situation, with the girl, was more or less his textbook definition of awkward. This was more for her benefit than his, he tells himself. When he tried to stammer his way out of that, he thought she was going to keel over. He wanted to run as far away from the situation as humanly possible, preferably to the other side of the aircraft carrier. Then he remembered all the speeches Mum would make about how he had to make new friends, and decided a little queasiness would save him from a lecture for the rest of the damn trip. The door is still opened a crack. He peeks inside and sees no one there. He knocks on the door swinging open. Leaning in, he looks around. The book is still on the floor. Sighing, he walks in, taking the book and placing it on the desk, looking at the cover. It is a medium-sized, paperback book, and he raises an eyebrow as he reads the title. Current Themes in Theoretical Biology? He asks, huh? The door to the bathroom slides open. She stands in the doorway, freezing. Their eyes meet, and he drops the book, hand quickly going behind his head, scratching. Sorry, he says, thought I'd clean up. She smiles, a shaky, tentative thing. Her lip twitches as she does so, a sound similar to a laugh but less substantial escaping until she finally forms it into a word. Hi, she squeaks. Hi, he responds, sorry about earlier. I'm a little nervous around people. Yeah, she responds, folding her arms under her chest. Stepping forward, he approaches. He doesn't see the wince on her face as he stands an arm's length from her. I'd like to try this again, he says, extending a hand. I'm Shinji. She smiles, shakily, and takes his hand in a tentative grip. I'm Asuka, she responds. Gears whir and the voice brings back a memory. He smiles, laughing. You're Dr. Sahu's daughter, he says. We talked on the phone, didn't we? She laughs in response, avoiding his eyes. Yeah, she responds. You are not with your group? They're inspecting Unit 02, he responds with a shrug. I don't think too much about the technology. I just let Mom do her work. Yeah, if your mother's the person who developed the technology, it must be nice. Eyes lock again. She freezes, fingers twitching against her arms. Can I show you around? The cages, as they are known, are always filled up to waist height with LCL. Not waist height of humans, though. Instead, they are filled up to the waist of the Evangelions, which serves as both a shock absorber for any accidents and a cushion should anyone fall off the catwalks. That it is quite easy to breathe in the LCL makes the job of maintaining the super weapon somewhat less dangerous, as the arm of Unit 00 is reattached under the supervision of Lieutenant Hibuki, and Second Lieutenant Hyuga Makoto. The glasses-wearing man with short-cropped black hair has his hand on the walkie-talkie at all times, watching with sucked teeth as the armor is fitted into place. Well, now comes the testing, Maya sighs. Once we have all the bolts and restraints fitted in, we can hold full activation tests with Ray. Didn't her hijacking it against the fifth angel kind of tell us she can pilot? Duress is one thing, Maya sighs, tapping commands on her PDA, files flipping onto the screen. She got into the EVA to help Shinji. Her piloting it went calm for her is another matter. Hyuga snickers. Nodding as the final restraints are fixed into place, sirens sound as the catwalks move away. Rolling his shoulders and yawning, he checks the time. Well, let's call this in, he says. Who do we call? The commander or Dr. Igari? She snorts. Who do you think? So, Unit 02 is actually kept on the frigate Tremine, which was built by NERV by Sea EVA Transport. Another of the frigates is actually retrofitted to house a nuclear generator and power cable, just in case we're forced to field the Angel while we're at sea. The mess hall of the Over the Rainbow is abuzz, sailors and officers cycling in and out as the two newcomers enter. Most of the commotion, however, comes from a table at the center of the mess, where a crowd has gathered as Misato loudly recounts the epic battle against the Fifth Angel. And there's the man of the hour. Naval regulations state that Misato can't get drunk while on duty, especially on a UN aircraft carrier, so Shinji can only assume she's sober. Sober, and using the term crab battle and missile to the face. Shinji shudders, shrinking slightly where he stands. Turning his head, he sees Asuka wearing the same small smile she was wearing when they arrived. In fact, he notices her expression isn't changing at all. Tentatively, his fingers touch her wrist. She starts, eyes wide, half turning to him. "Are you all right?" he whispers. Fine," she responds. "Well, who's your new girlfriend?" Both their cheeks flush bright red at Misato's question as she stands in front of them. Asuka's fingers tap against each other at her waist as she looks down, Shinji scratching the back of his head. Finally, clearing his throat, Shinji gives off a shaky smile and laughs. This is Asuka. Dr. Sahu's daughter." "I should have noticed the resemblance," Misato says, folding her arms as she grins. "Well, if it isn't little Asuka. Dr. Ikari's been looking forward to meeting you." "Yes, she has?" Asuka asks, snapping back to attention. "Oh really?" "Once she finished inspecting Unit 02, she was going to go looking for you," Misato responds, one eye on Shinji. "In fact, I think I'm going to give her a call now that you've turned up. Shinji, your friends are on the observation deck. Introduce them." He nods. Asuka nods as well, fingers still twitching before he leads her out. Watching them go, her eyebrow twitches and her right fist clenches, muttering a swear. "What the hell did Sahu do to that girl?" she whispers, taking out her phone and dialing. "Hello? Dr. Ikari? Yeah, I've found Shinji, and he's with Asuka. You're going to want to talk with them." "Right. Understood, Katsuragi. I'll be over shortly." Tapping off the earpiece, Yui turns back to Sahu and Earl. Earl taps his foot in impatience, standing before the four dim green eyes of the red and white super weapon, looking between the two doctors. "Yes?" he asks. "We'll finish the inspection later," Yui says with an easy smile. "Katsuragi just found my son, and I feel like spending some time with him." Earl mutters something German and unpleasant, as the other occupant of the impromptu cage folds her arms and sighs. "Really, Ikari?" Kyoko asks, "now, of all times?" "Before he came to Tokyo 3, I hadn't seen him in 4 years, Yui says, shrugging. "We ask too much of them. I just thought it would behoove me to spend some time with him. As his mother." If she notices the dig, she doesn't show it, nostrils flaring. "Besides which," Yui continues, "I trust you, Kyoko. I doubt I will find anything wrong with either Unit 02 or the pilot. If you will excuse me." Turning on her heel, she begins walking to the deck and the helicopter waiting. Snorting, Kyoko mutters under her breath and follows. Grinning as they leave, Earl turns back to the Eva, his Eva, and folds his arms. And waits. 2G was overjoyed. Finally, they had met someone normal, an exclamation which earned him an elbow to the ribs from Hikari. Although, relieved to find someone of the fairer sex, Hikari promptly pulled Asuka aside and they began talking. "Man, you're good," 2G says. "I'm sorry?" Shinji asks. "Cologne? Money? Ya gotta tell me your secret." Screwing his face in confusion, he turns slightly and inclines his head at 2G. "Secret for what?" "Your babe magnet abilities," 2G chuckles, patting him on the back. "First there's Hikari. I know you two don't go for each other, but she thinks you're cute. She told me she can't keep a secret. Then, you get to live with Misato. Then there's Ray, who you get to work with. And now this. Well, okay. I mean, she is attractive. I admit that. But, I'm not surrounding myself with women. At least, not on purpose. Man, if I didn't know you were honest, I'd hate you so much." The doors to the deck open, heels clapping on metal. "Well, if it isn't little Asuka." They turn to the voice. Next to Hikari, Asuka's eyes go wide, Shinji shifting slightly. "Mum?" "Dr. Hikari," Asuka says with a small smile. Yui smiles, walking over to Asuka and taking her hands in her own. "It's been 8 years since I saw you in person," she says, "look at you. All grown up." The girl gives off a shaky smile as Misato walks onto the deck. Walking over, she pats Shinji on the shoulder, making him squawk in surprise as she chuckles. "What?" he asks, low enough to not disturb the other conversation. "We need to talk," Misato whispers. "Have you met Dr. Saru yet?" "Not really." "Well, you're about to. Good luck." "Now, why haven't I seen you for the entire trip?" Yu asks. "I was in my cabin," Asuka responds, fingers fidgeting in Yu's hands, "catching up on my studies. Shinji ended up on my deck and I've been showing him around the ship." Yu beams. "That's awfully nice of you," she says. "I just came back from inspecting Unit 02. What are your plans when we reach Tokyo 3? The door opens. If the sliding door could, it would slam, as feet stomp on the metal deck. "Asuka." The girl freezes, everyone turning, as Kyoko marches towards the girl and folds her arms. Ignoring the glare from Katsuragi and the calm, appraising look from Yu, she folds her arms and looks from behind her glasses upon her daughter, who visibly shrinks. "The third child has enough to do without you dragging him around the ship," Kyoko says. "Go back to your cabin." She nods, gazing downward. "Yes, mother." "Excuse me." Kyoko spins, leveling her gaze at Shinji. Considering his parentage, it does little to unnerve him. "I asked her to give me a tour," he says. Kyoko pushes her glasses back up her nose. "I'm sorry?" she asks. "I asked her to give me a tour," he repeats, slower, "Doctor." Behind her, a smirk on her face, Yui mouths the words, "Good boy." Any argument or discussion is interrupted by the flash of light from the carrier deck, accompanied by the sound of a massive object dropping and causing the ship to list and tilt. The light clears, their vision returning, and Shinji almost hangs from the observation deck's railing at the great thing now kneeling on the flight deck. 200 tall, purple and green, a demonic visage with a single horn coming from the edge of its nose. "Unit 01, he says. "What the hell is it doing here?" Misato yells. Walking up next to her, tapping on her PDA, Yui grimaces as readings come up on the touch screen. "It created an Einstein-Rosen bridge using its AD field," she says. "Needless to say, I do not like the idea it could be acting independently, but that's not the bad part. There is a total of one reason why Unit 01 would translocate itself here." The reason comes as Hikari shrieks. They turn, looking starboard, just as a massive plume of water rushes into one of the frigates, splitting it down the middle before it explodes. The shockwave rocks the carrier, as the water breaks and something clears the surface. It is easily as long as the over-the-rainbow. Its skin, its hide, is cream white, a series of dorsal fins shaped like knives running the length of its back. The body is flat, like a series of manta rays attached end to end, flapping wings fluttering in the air, lined with angry red that forms into a sigil of a great unblinking eye down each side. Its jaw splits into 3, each lined with great black teeth, and 4 eyes mark its front, more eyes lining its underbelly and a series of 6 lining its back, all the way to the whip-like tail half a mile long. As it dives, the light around it bends and flashes, sending it deep into the ocean before surface sand stares at them. A low, moaning growl escapes it, and for a moment, Shinji swears it is looking at him. "I am. Through license of he who is called I Am I have come. Though my feet shall never touch the base earth on this blessed quest, I have come. In my wake, I leave a dead sea. Before me, lies completion. I am the roaring beast of God. Angel of the creatures of the sea. I am Gagil. I have come.